What if I told you that some of the challenges children experience today, difficulty sitting still, poor handwriting, clumsiness, trouble reading, emotional dysregulation, or even difficulty riding a bike, might actually be linked to reflexes that should have disappeared years ago? Sounds strange, right? Because when most people hear the word reflex, they think about a doctor tapping your knee with a little hammer. But babies are born with a whole collection of automatic movement patterns called primitive reflexes. These reflexes are essential for survival and development in infancy. The problem? They're supposed to fade away, and when they don't, they can quietly interfere with development long after infancy is over. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating topics in childhood development, primitive reflexes. Specifically, two reflexes occupational therapists pay close attention to, the ATNR and the STNR. We'll explore what they are, why they matter, and how they can affect everything from handwriting to attention and coordination. Let's get started. When most people think about child development, they imagine milestones: rolling, crawling, walking, talking. But development is much more than reaching milestones. Think of development like building a house. Everyone notices the roof. Everyone notices the paint. Everyone notices the finished product. But nobody sees the foundation buried underground. Primitive reflexes are part of that foundation. Before a child can write, catch a ball, sit upright in a classroom, or focus on a worksheet, their nervous system has to build a stable base. Occupational therapists look at development from the ground up. We're interested in how children move, play, learn, regulate emotions, interact with their environment, and participate in everyday life. When we see challenges in those areas, we often ask, what's happening underneath the surface? And that's where primitive reflexes come into the picture. Reflexes are automatic movement patterns controlled by the lower parts of the brain. They're present at birth, or even before birth. These reflexes help babies survive and interact with the world before they have conscious control over their movements. Imagine a newborn. Nobody teaches them how to suck. Nobody teaches them how to grasp. Nobody teaches them how to turn toward a touch on their cheek. These behaviors happen automatically. Primitive reflexes are like temporary training wheels for the nervous system. They help organize early movement and sensory experiences. As the brain matures, those training wheels are no longer needed. Higher brain centers gradually take over. The reflexes become integrated, and voluntary control develops. But sometimes those training wheels stay on longer than expected. When that happens, children may compensate in ways that look like attention problems, motor difficulties, sensory challenges, or academic struggles. The ATNR, the fencer's reflex. The Asymmetrical Tonic Neck Reflex. Don't let the complicated names scare you. You've probably seen it before. Turn a baby's head to one side. The arm and leg on the side they're looking toward extend. The opposite arm and leg bend. It creates a position that looks remarkably similar to a fencing stance. That's why many therapists call it the fencer's reflex. This reflex typically appears before birth and should become integrated during the first several months of life. So why is it important? Think about what happens every time you turn your head. As adults, we can turn our heads while keeping our arms and hands doing completely different things. We can read, write, drive, eat, no problem. But if the ATNR remains active, head movement may influence arm movement. Now imagine a child trying to write. Every time they look across the page, their body may subtly want to follow. Instead of their eyes moving independently, their whole body wants to move. This can contribute to difficulty crossing midline, poor handwriting, challenges copying from the board, difficulty tracking words while reading, awkward pencil control, reduced bilateral coordination. You might notice a child switching hands frequently, turning their paper excessively, or looking physically exhausted during schoolwork. The challenge isn't motivation. The challenge may be neurological organization. The STNR, the classroom reflex. Now let's talk about the STNR, the Symmetrical Tonic Neck Reflex. This reflex emerges later than the ATNR, typically around 6 to 9 months. It's often called the bridge between lying on the floor and crawling. The STNR helps babies learn to move on hands and knees. Here's how it works. When the head lifts up, the arms straighten, the legs bend. When the head moves down, the arms bend, the legs straighten. This movement pattern helps babies transition into crawling. Crawling isn't just transportation. It's one of the most neurologically rich activities in development. During crawling, children develop strength, coordination, weight shifting, visual skills, bilateral integration, motor planning, postural control, cross-body communication between brain hemispheres. But what happens if the STNR doesn't fully integrate? Children may struggle sitting upright at a desk. They often slump, wrap their feet around chair legs, sit in a W position, rest their head on their desk, constantly shift positions, appear fidgety, or have difficulty maintaining posture during classroom tasks. The body is essentially trying to organize itself using an immature movement pattern. And sometimes what appears to be inattentiveness is actually fatigue. It's hard to focus on learning when your body is working overtime just to stay upright. The connection most people miss, here's something many people don't realize. Primitive reflexes are not simply movement issues. They're nervous system issues. Movement is how the brain develops. Every time a child moves, sensory information floods the nervous system. The brain processes that information and builds new connections. Movement is literally shaping the architecture of the developing brain. That's why occupational therapists don't just look at isolated skills. We look at the entire child. Can they maintain posture, coordinate both sides of the body, process sensory information, move efficiently, regulate emotions, attend to tasks, participate in meaningful activities? Everything is connected. Development isn't a collection of separate boxes. It's an integrated system. So what does an occupational therapist actually do when reflexes appear to be impacting development? First, we don't focus solely on the reflex itself. We look at function. Can the child participate successfully in daily life? Can they engage in school activities, play with peers, manage self-care tasks, develop independence? Then we investigate what might be contributing to the challenges we're seeing. We may assess postural strength, motor planning, visual motor integration, coordination, bilateral skills, sensory processing, fine motor abilities, and reflex integration patterns. Intervention is rarely about performing a single exercise. Instead, therapy often incorporates purposeful movement experiences that support nervous system development. Activities may include prone play, animal walks, obstacle courses, crawling patterns, climbing, swinging, balance challenges, cross-body movements, strengthening activities, and meaningful play experiences that naturally encourage more mature movement patterns. The goal is always participation, not perfection, participation. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today's video, it's this. Childhood development is far more complex than it appears on the surface. When a child struggles with handwriting, attention, posture, coordination, or emotional regulation, there may be deeper developmental factors involved. Primitive reflexes like the ATNR and STNR are only one piece of a much larger puzzle, but they remind us of something incredibly important. Behavior is communication. Movement tells a story. And underneath every skill is a nervous system working hard to organize itself. The more we understand how development unfolds, the better equipped we are to support children in reaching their full potential. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about childhood development, sensory processing, reflex integration, motor skills, and the science behind how children grow and learn, make sure to subscribe and join us for the next video. And tell me in the comments, did you know primitive reflexes could affect school performance and everyday activities? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.